Fat kid, black kid, double whammy. Me, I come from family that can't vote. My genetics is felony, haven't been failing me lately. You know, I watched my uncle die. It was crazy. He was foaming at the mouth. I held onto the couch as he fell to the ground. Now he a memory. I lost my virginity that weekend, and my cousin. We were bugging. It was fun, and I was nothing but a kid who couldn't love right. So I took that first slight and I snuffed it. My friends were murderers, killing brain cells and records, wannabe rappers. Our lives wouldn't let us. That weekend was magic. See, everything had happened so fast, I couldn't live it all sober. Heaven got closer as we poured our youth into styrofoam cups and told our parents it was juice. We never felt it was enough, so we would go outside and shoot hoops or people in later years. I made it out, but I can't speak on what David did. He's still in a drought. But I've got money and love and no fucks for all the hate I'd give. I never know what to say when people ask me how I made it here, like, I'm not okay. I'm hardly facing fear. In fact, success is kind of tight on me. But that low-hanging fruit never did right for me. And I got pride now, a result of dignity and depression, testing my faith and ability. This is recess after graduation. I'm alumni. I can swing when I want to, hit the park and feel the breeze whenever I feel like. And I don't know if it gets better than this, because it's already better than it was, which really makes success so much better than it is. I'm a gift to myself. The piece of paper marking my adoption and emancipation told me so. But how you think I'm different? How you not say hi when I say hi? Like how you get dismissive? I swear the things I could tell you, I could make your head spin. And I feel powerful now because I was powerless then. I wrap my actions in plastic so I know you hear it. I swear the success on this kid is just enough to fear it. The rebellion is so obvious. Baggy clothes because I don't mean to look pretty. Heavy soul because I had to do so much on my own. But here we are. And I just want to say that, you know, if you got a voice, you owe it to yourself to learn how to use it. Poem. The late, great James Baldwin once wrote that a language comes into existence by means of brutal necessity, and the rules of that language are determined by what the language must convey. Although poetry itself is not a language, I've found that this lingual framework applies. People often ask me, what is a poem? What should it sound like? I've always thought that it should sound like you. A poem can be a knife used to carve into the world the space you need to exist. A poem can be a hug used to comfort yourself and the people you love. Because there is no permanent state of the self, there can be no standard for self-expression. If the rules of a poem are determined by what the poem must convey, then your rules are already written inside you. Its purpose is malleable, shaped only by the sound of your voice. In this way, the medium becomes a message, and the very act of writing poetry becomes resistance. Initially, my introduction to poetry had very little to do with the institution of academia. It was hip-hop and pop culture that convinced me of its worth. Namely, rap artist Jermaine Cole, who wrote, I used to print out Nas raps and put them up on my wall. My friends thought they was words, but it was pictures I saw. And since I wanted to draw, I would read them in awe. This describes a cycle of inspiration, a lineage of resistance, and even a reason to exist, all in a few lines. The articulation of desire, the pain of being misunderstood, and a far-off dream to pursue with all your heart. Together, these conditions are emblematic of the kind of brutal necessity that gave birth to my creative voice. When I was 12 years old, I was taken from my mother and placed into the foster care system for the third time. If despair were a color, it was the shade of my face. My whole body rejected this exodus. I erupted into a suicidal fire, held captive by all the things I did not know. I had endured trauma so intense in the first 12 years of my life that I had stopped keeping track of my own birthdays. It was then that I wrote my first poem. And it helped me to learn that it doesn't matter if you don't know what a metaphor is. You'll write one anyway. You'll look at your life and say to yourself, wow, this thing feels a lot like that thing. And draw the connection organically through life experience and cultural osmosis. Lucky that my coping mechanism was also a talent, I began to over-rely on the precision of language, hoping that this might eliminate the source of my grief. Of course, it did not. I was idealistic. I thought I could write my way into a room where people loved me. That technical skill would save me from a lifetime of insecurity and unworthiness. I wore my intellect like armor, and I dared someone to touch me. Me, poor and black and fat, and even after all these years, still just a child. And you know I'm from East Cleveland. It's not exactly an intellectual hub of opportunity. In fact, according to the Center for Community Solutions, Cleveland, Ohio is the second poorest large city in the United States, with over half of children under the age of 5 living in poverty. I was one of those children, pulled like a magnet to the call of generational curses, in and out of foster care, or more simply, in and out of care. My environment was a pressure cooker, and it was roasting me alive. I had to do something. So in elementary school, I stole phonics books, took them home with me to study. I watched Netflix, listened for big words from white faces, and tried to mimic the context. Practiced standard speech in the mirror, sculpting my tongue into something corporate and palatable. See, I underwent changes, but they took a toll. The Herculean task I subjected myself to was assimilation, which is different than resistance. I looked up one day and I didn't recognize the sound of my voice, or the style of my hair, or the feeling in my body. Over time, I had become disconnected from the source of my poetry, disconnected from myself. As rap artist Jermaine Cole often provided the soundtrack for my life, in his words, the good news is that I came a long way. The bad news is that I went the wrong way. Eventually, I came to terms with the fact that I was someone else now. No longer that kid from the hood, but not exactly a scholar either. I was a poet. I was dealing with the uncertainty of life the only way I knew how. I was writing it all down, like a nerd sat quietly in the corner. My foster brothers teased me for it. Some even beat me up. But I knew something that my foster brothers didn't. I knew that all violence is social. It's an idea. And you can't shoot an idea with a gun or fight it with your fists because it lacks a physical form. Of course, this meant I couldn't bring a love poem to a fist fight, but I couldn't swing at life either. From this, I understood that there is no right way to deal with the absurd pressures in life as a child. But poetry was the only tool at my disposal that helped me fight back against the idea that I was worthless. With an arsenal of words, integrity, and profound meaning, I'm proud to say that I won that fight. And only by being vulnerable within my poetry can I continue to win it. What we do with our future is the only thing that can give our past any meaning. What we do with the things we can control begins to define everything that we can't. So the opportunity to shape our voices is actually the opportunity to shape our lives. Personally, I have many people to thank for the beautiful shape that my life has taken. As I went from a life of intense poverty and depression to becoming a best-selling author and poet. What stands out to me is how we know that a person can make a poem. But we often overlook how a poem can make a person. To me, that is the essence of poetry. Fighting invisibility. Sidechain to the war effort to pierce the sky, burst the bubble, make the most noise, and take up the most space. A poem is a beacon of light. It asks the whole world the question, is there anyone else like me? Marginalized in this way, hurting like this. And as artists, as people, we are duty-bound to answer the call, to join the cycle of inspiration, and to write our very first poem. Thank you.